The summer heat pressed down on the small town of Riverside like a heavy blanket. The afternoon sun blazed mercilessly as people moved slowly through their daily routines, seeking shade wherever they could find it. The streets were mostly empty, with only a few cars passing by occasionally. It was the kind of day where everyone preferred to stay indoors with their air conditioners running. Maya Thompson wiped the sweat from her forehead as she walked along Main Street. The 17-year-old girl had just finished her shift at the local bookstore and was heading home. Her backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, filled with a couple of books her manager had let her borrow. Maya loved reading, and it was one of the few escapes she had from the everyday struggles of her life. She was a bright student at Riverside High School, known for her excellent grades and her quiet, respectful demeanor. Her teachers often praised her dedication, and her classmates respected her for her intelligence and kindness. Maya had dreams of becoming a lawyer one day, wanting to help people who couldn't help themselves. She spent countless hours studying, determined to earn a scholarship to a good university. As Maya walked past the old hardware store, she noticed a police car parked across the street. Officer Derek Mitchell sat inside, his eyes scanning the street with a look of boredom mixed with something else that Maya couldn't quite identify. She had seen him around town before, and there was something about him that always made her uncomfortable. He had a reputation among the young people in town, especially the black teenagers, as someone who was quick to stop them for no real reason. Maya tried to walk past without drawing attention to herself, but Officer Mitchell had already noticed her. He watched her for a moment, then started his patrol car and slowly drove across the street, pulling up beside her. Maya's heart began to beat faster, but she kept walking, hoping he would just drive past. The patrol car kept pace with her slow walking speed. Then she heard his voice calling out from the open window. "Hey, you there! Stop right where you are." Maya stopped and turned to face the officer, her stomach tightening with anxiety. She hadn't done anything wrong, but she knew from experience that sometimes that didn't matter. She had heard too many stories from her friends and family members about encounters with police that had gone wrong for no good reason. "Yes, officer?" Maya asked politely, trying to keep her voice steady. Officer Mitchell stepped out of his car, his hand resting casually on his belt near his weapon. He was a tall man in his early 40s, with a weathered face and cold blue eyes that seemed to look right through people. He walked toward Maya with a slow, deliberate pace that made her even more nervous. "What's in the bag?" he demanded, gesturing toward her backpack. "Just some books, sir," Maya replied. "I work at the bookstore down the street. My manager let me borrow them." "I didn't ask for your life story," Officer Mitchell said sharply. "Open the bag. I want to see what's inside." Maya hesitated. She knew she had every right to refuse an unreasonable search, something she had learned in her civics class. Her teacher had explained that citizens had constitutional rights, including protection from unlawful searches and seizures. But she also knew that standing up for those rights could sometimes make situations worse, especially for someone who looked like her. "Officer, I haven't done anything wrong," Maya said carefully. "I'm just walking home from work." "Do you have a reason for stopping me?" The officer's face hardened. "I don't need to explain myself to you. When I tell you to do something, you do it. Now open that bag before I arrest you for obstruction." Maya felt her hands trembling slightly. She had always been taught to respect authority, but she also knew this wasn't right. She hadn't broken any laws. She wasn't being disruptive. She was simply walking home from her job. There was no legitimate reason for this stop, and she knew it. "Sir, with all due respect, I know my rights," Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm and respectful. "Unless you have reasonable suspicion that I've committed a crime, I don't have to submit to a search. I'm happy to show you my employee ID from the bookstore if that helps." For a moment, Officer Mitchell just stared at her, his jaw clenching. Then, without warning, his hand shot out and he slapped Maya hard across her face. The sound echoed in the quiet street like a gunshot. Maya stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek, which burned with pain and shock. Her eyes filled with tears, not just from the physical pain, but from the humiliation and injustice of what had just happened. "You think you can talk back to me?" Officer Mitchell shouted, his face red with anger. "You think you're smart? I'll show you what happens to people who disrespect the law." Maya stood there frozen in shock, her cheek throbbing. A few people had started to gather on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion. Some held up their phones, recording what was happening. Maya could barely process what had just occurred. She had never been hit by anyone in her life, let alone a police officer who was supposed to protect her. Officer Mitchell grabbed her arm roughly. "You're under arrest for resisting an officer and disorderly conduct." "But I didn't do anything," Maya protested, her voice breaking. Tears streamed down her face now, and she could taste the salt on her lips. The officer pulled out his handcuffs and roughly turned Maya around, forcing her hands behind her back. The metal felt cold against her wrists as he tightened them. Maya's mind raced. How had a simple walk home turned into this nightmare? What would happen to her now? Would she have a criminal record? Would this destroy her chances of getting into college? As Officer Mitchell led her toward his patrol car, Maya noticed more people had gathered. Some were shouting at the officer, telling him to let her go. Others recorded everything on their phones. An elderly woman Maya recognized from church called out, "That child didn't do anything. Why are you treating her like this?" But Officer Mitchell ignored them all. He opened the back door of his patrol car and pushed Maya inside, not caring that her backpack fell to the ground, spilling her borrowed books onto the hot pavement. The door slammed shut and Maya found herself trapped in the back seat, unable to wipe away the tears that continued to fall. Through the metal grating that separated the front and back seats, Maya could see Officer Mitchell talking into his radio. She couldn't make out what he was saying, but his voice was aggressive and defensive. He seemed to be arguing with someone on the other end. Maya's mind raced with thoughts of her mother, who worked 2 jobs to support them after Maya's father had left when she was young. Her mother had always taught her to be respectful, to work hard, and to believe in justice. But where was the justice in this? Maya had followed the rules. She had been polite. She had simply known her rights and tried to exercise them. And for that, she had been assaulted and arrested. The patrol car began to move, driving away from the scene. Maya watched through the window as familiar streets passed by, feeling like she was seeing them for the first time. Everything looked different now. The world she thought she understood had revealed itself to be something else entirely. She thought about all the times she had defended the police in debates with her friends, believing that most officers were good people trying to do a difficult job. Now she wasn't so sure. As they approached the police station, Maya noticed Officer Mitchell constantly checking his rearview mirror. He seemed agitated, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. His radio kept crackling with messages, and though Maya couldn't hear them clearly, she could tell something was happening. The officer's confidence from earlier seemed to be wavering. He kept glancing back at her through the mirror, and for the first time, Maya saw something that might have been worry in his eyes. What Maya didn't know was that one of the witnesses had already posted the video online. Within minutes, it had been shared hundreds of times. People were outraged at what they saw. A police officer slapping a teenage girl for simply asserting her constitutional rights. The video was spreading like wildfire across social media, and soon, it would reach people who had the power to change everything. But for now, Maya sat in the back of that patrol car, her face still stinging, her wrists bound by handcuffs, wondering how her life had changed so dramatically in just a few terrible minutes. She had no idea that the next few hours would bring changes she could never have imagined. Changes that would affect not just her life, but the entire community of Riverside. The police station was a square, gray building that had stood in downtown Riverside for over 30 years. Its walls were cracked and weathered, and the air conditioning barely worked during the hot summer months. As Officer Mitchell pulled into the back parking lot, Maya could see other patrol cars lined up in neat rows. The reality of her situation hit her even harder. She was actually being taken into custody, treated like a criminal when all she had done was walk home from work. Officer Mitchell opened the back door and pulled Maya out roughly. She stumbled on the pavement, her balance thrown off by having her hands cuffed behind her back. He gripped her arm and led her through a heavy metal door into the station. The inside was dimly lit, with fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead. The smell of old coffee and cleaning supplies filled the air. As they entered, Maya noticed several other officers standing around the front desk. They looked up when she came in, their expressions ranging from curiosity to indifference. Officer Mitchell led her past them toward a hallway lined with doors. Maya's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Everything felt surreal, like she was watching this happen to someone else. "Mitchell, hold on a second," a voice called out. Maya turned to see a female officer approaching. She was older than Officer Mitchell, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read Sergeant Rodriguez. Her expression was serious as she looked from Officer Mitchell to Maya, her eyes lingering on Maya's tear-stained face and red cheek. "What's the charge here?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked, her tone professional, but with an edge that suggested she wanted real answers. "Resisting an officer, disorderly conduct," Officer Mitchell said quickly. "She refused to comply with a lawful order and became aggressive." Maya's eyes widened. "That's not true. I didn't do anything aggressive. He hit me for refusing to let him search my bag without cause." "She's lying," Officer Mitchell said, but Maya noticed a slight tremor in his voice. "You can't believe these people. They always make up stories to get out of trouble." Sergeant Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. "These people? What exactly do you mean by that, Mitchell?" Before he could answer, she continued, "And why does this girl have a handprint on her face?" Officer Mitchell opened his mouth, then closed it. Maya could see him struggling to come up with an explanation. She tried to run. I had to restrain her." "By slapping her across the face?" Sergeant Rodriguez stepped closer to Maya, examining her cheek with concern. "That's not restraining someone. That's assault. I didn't. Look, she was being disrespectful, talking back, refusing orders," Officer Mitchell said, his voice rising defensively. "What was I supposed to do? Let her walk away?" "You were supposed to act like a professional," Sergeant Rodriguez snapped. She turned to another officer nearby. "Thompson, take Miss." She looked at Maya. "Thompson. Maya Thompson," Maya said quietly. "Take Miss Thompson to interview room 2. Get those cuffs off her and get her some water. And I want someone to document that injury on her face with photographs." Sergeant Rodriguez turned back to Officer Mitchell. "You, in my office now." Officer Mitchell's face reddened with anger, but he followed the sergeant down the hallway. Maya watched them go, feeling a small flicker of hope. At least someone here seemed to care about what had really happened. Officer Thompson, a younger man with kind eyes, gently led Maya to a small room with a table and a few chairs. He carefully removed her handcuffs, apologizing when she winced as circulation returned to her hands. "I'm sorry about this," he said quietly. "Just sit tight. Someone will be with you shortly." Maya sat down, rubbing her wrists where the metal had pressed into her skin. She looked around the small room. It was bare except for the table and chairs, with a mirror on one wall that she suspected was two-way glass. She caught her reflection and barely recognized herself. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and there was a visible red mark on her cheek where Officer Mitchell had struck her. A few minutes later, a woman in civilian clothes entered carrying a camera and some paperwork. She introduced herself as Detective Sarah Chen. She was patient and gentle as she photographed Maya's injury from multiple angles, documenting everything carefully. She also took detailed notes as Maya told her exactly what had happened, starting from the moment Officer Mitchell had pulled up beside her. "Maya, I want you to know that what happened to you today was wrong," Detective Chen said when Maya had finished her account. "No officer has the right to strike someone, especially not for exercising their constitutional rights. I need you to be patient while we sort this out, okay?" Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure what to believe anymore. She had grown up thinking the police were the good guys, the people you called when you needed help. But now she had been hurt by one of them, and she didn't know who to trust. While Maya waited in the interview room, events outside were moving rapidly. The video of her encounter with Officer Mitchell had exploded across social media. It had been shared thousands of times now, with hashtags demanding justice. News outlets had picked up the story. Reporters were already gathering outside the police station, demanding information about the incident. Inside the station, Sergeant Rodriguez sat across from Officer Mitchell in her office, her expression cold. "I've been a cop for 23 years, she said, "and in all that time, I've never been as ashamed of a fellow officer as I am right now. What you did out there was inexcusable." "She was being difficult," Officer Mitchell protested. "You weren't there. You don't know how she was acting." "I don't need to be there. The whole thing was recorded," Sergeant Rodriguez said, turning her computer monitor toward him. On the screen, the video played. Maya standing on the sidewalk, speaking calmly and respectfully. Officer Mitchell becoming aggressive. The slap. The arrest. Everything was captured clearly. Officer Mitchell's face went pale as he watched. Who? How did you get this? It's everywhere, Derek. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. The entire internet has seen you assault a teenage girl for no reason. And do you know what else they're seeing? They're seeing you tell her you don't need to explain yourself. They're seeing you violate her civil rights. They're seeing exactly the kind of police brutality that people have been protesting about. Officer Mitchell slumped in his chair. The confidence and aggression from earlier had completely drained away. I lost my temper. She was being a smartass, acting like she knew better than me. She did know better than you, Sergeant Rodriguez said sharply. She knew her rights. She handled herself with more professionalism and restraint than you did. And now, because you couldn't control your ego, you've put this entire department under a microscope. Before Officer Mitchell could respond, there was a knock on the door. Another officer stuck his head in. Sergeant, the chief wants to see you immediately, and there are about 20 reporters outside demanding a statement. Sergeant Rodriguez stood up. Don't leave this office, she told Officer Mitchell, and don't talk to anyone. As news of the incident continued to spread, something else was happening that no one at the police station knew about yet. The video had reached someone particularly important. Captain Marcus Williams, a recently appointed officer with the state police, was at home when his daughter showed him the video on her phone. His daughter attended the same high school as Maya and knew her from advanced placement classes. Dad, you have to do something, his daughter pleaded. Maya's one of the nicest people in our school. She never causes trouble. This is so wrong. Captain Williams watched the video 3 times, his jaw tightening with each viewing. He had spent his entire career fighting against the exact kind of behavior he was witnessing. As one of the highest-ranking black officers in the state police, he had dedicated himself to reforming law enforcement and building trust between police and communities of color. This incident was exactly the kind of thing that set back years of hard work. He picked up his phone and made a call. This is Captain Williams. I need you to connect me with the Riverside Police Department immediately. I want to speak with whoever's in charge right now. Meanwhile, Maya sat in the interview room, unaware of the storm brewing around her case. Her mother had been called and was on her way to the station. Maya dreaded seeing the worry and pain in her mother's eyes. She knew her mother worked so hard to provide for her, and now Maya felt like she had let her down, even though she knew logically that none of this was her fault. The door opened and Sergeant Rodriguez entered with a cup of water and a gentle expression. Maya, I need you to know that we're taking this very seriously. What Officer Mitchell did was wrong, and there will be consequences. Your mother is on her way, and you'll be released to her immediately when she arrives. No charges will be filed against you. Maya felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were tears of relief. Really? Really? You did nothing wrong today. In fact, you handled yourself remarkably well under very difficult circumstances. Sergeant Rodriguez paused. I also want you to know that someone very important wants to speak with you if you're willing. His name is Captain Marcus Williams from the state police. He saw what happened and wants to help. Maya didn't know who Captain Williams was or how he could help, but she nodded. She just wanted this nightmare to be over. But as she would soon discover, it was only beginning, and the next chapter would bring changes that would ripple far beyond her own life. 20 minutes later, Maya heard hurried footsteps in the hallway outside the interview room. The door burst open, and her mother rushed in, her face filled with worry and anger. Patricia Thompson was a strong woman who had raised Maya alone after her husband left, working as a nurse during the day and cleaning offices at night to make ends meet. She had sacrificed everything to give Maya opportunities she never had, and seeing her daughter sitting in a police station with a bruised face broke her heart. Baby, are you okay? Patricia wrapped her arms around Maya, holding her tight. Maya buried her face in her mother's shoulder and let the tears flow freely now. All the fear and stress she had been holding back came pouring out. I didn't do anything wrong, Mama, Maya sobbed. I was just walking home from work. He stopped me for no reason, and when I asked why, he hit me. Patricia pulled back to look at her daughter's face, her fingers gently touching the red mark on Maya's cheek, her eyes filled with tears of rage and pain. I know, baby. I know you didn't do anything. This is not your fault. Do you hear me? This is not your fault. Sergeant Rodriguez stood in the doorway, giving them a moment. She had children of her own and could only imagine the fear Patricia must have felt getting that phone call. "Ms. Thompson, I'm Sergeant Rodriguez. I want to assure you that Maya is not being charged with anything. She's free to go home with you right now. We have everything documented, including photographs of her injury and her statement about what happened." Patricia stood up, her sadness transforming into fierce protectiveness. "What's going to happen to the officer who did this to my daughter? Because if you think I'm just going to walk away and pretend this didn't happen, you're mistaken. My child was assaulted by someone who's supposed to protect her." "I understand completely," Sergeant Rodriguez said. "Officer Mitchell has been suspended pending a full investigation. I can promise you that this is being taken very seriously at every level of our department." Before Patricia could respond, there was a knock on the door. Another officer appeared. "Sergeant, Captain Williams from State Police is here. He's speaking with the chief right now." Sergeant Rodriguez nodded, then turned back to Patricia and Maya. "Ms. Thompson, there's someone here who wants to speak with you both if you're willing. Captain Marcus Williams from the State Police. He saw the video of what happened and drove here immediately. He's a good man, and I think you should hear what he has to say." Patricia looked at Maya, who nodded slightly. They were led to a larger conference room where a tall black man in a crisp State Police uniform stood looking out the window. He turned when they entered, and Maya immediately noticed the kindness in his eyes mixed with determination. He had the bearing of someone who commanded respect, but his expression was gentle as he looked at Maya's injured face. "Ms. Thompson, Maya, thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Captain Williams said, shaking Patricia's hand and giving Maya a sympathetic smile. "My name is Marcus Williams. I'm with the State Police and my daughter goes to school with Maya. She showed me the video and I came as quickly as I could." They all sat down at the conference table. Captain Williams leaned forward, his expression serious but compassionate. "First, Maya, I want to say how sorry I am for what happened to you today. What Officer Mitchell did was completely unacceptable and goes against everything law enforcement should stand for. You handled yourself with remarkable composure and maturity." "Thank you, sir," Maya said quietly. Captain Williams continued, "I've been a police officer for 25 years. I've seen a lot of things, both good and bad. I became a cop because I wanted to help people and make my community safer. But I've also seen officers who abuse their power, who let their prejudices guide their actions instead of the law. What happened to you today is a perfect example of that. And it makes me angry because it destroys the trust that we work so hard to build." Patricia spoke up, her voice strong despite the emotion behind it. "Captain Williams, I appreciate you coming here, but words aren't enough. My daughter did everything right. She was respectful. She knew her rights, and she was still assaulted. How do I send her out into the world knowing this could happen again?" "You're absolutely right," Captain Williams agreed. "Words aren't enough. That's why I'm here to ensure there are real actions and consequences. Officer Mitchell will face both criminal and administrative charges. But more than that, I want to talk to you about turning this terrible experience into something that can create real change." Maya looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Captain Williams pulled out his phone and showed them the screen. "This video has been viewed over 2 million times in the past few hours. News outlets across the country are covering this story. People are outraged, and rightly so, but this attention gives us an opportunity to push for real police reform, not just here in Riverside, but potentially across the state." He looked directly at Maya. "You have a voice now, whether you wanted it or not. People are listening. And if you're willing, I'd like to help you use that voice to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to other young people." Patricia's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Are you asking my daughter to become some kind of spokesperson? Because she's been through enough already. I understand your concern and your right to be protective," Captain Williams said. "I'm not asking Maya to do anything she's not comfortable with, but I am offering to support her however she needs it. That could mean legal support, counseling, help with media if she chooses to speak out, or simply ensuring that the investigation into Officer Mitchell is thorough and transparent." Maya thought about everything that had happened. Just a few hours ago, she had been a regular teenager with dreams of becoming a lawyer to help people. Now she was sitting in a police station, the victim of police brutality, with a state police captain telling her she could help create change. It felt overwhelming. "I don't know," Maya said honestly. "I just wanted to go home from work. I never wanted any of this." "And you shouldn't have to want it," Captain Williams said gently. "This was forced upon you, but now that it's happened, you get to decide what comes next. There's no pressure from me. Whatever you and your mother decide, I'll respect it." Outside the conference room, the police station was in chaos. The chief of police was holding an emergency meeting with senior staff about how to handle the public relations disaster unfolding. Reporters were camped outside, broadcasting live updates. The mayor's office had been calling every 10 minutes demanding information, and social media was ablaze with calls for justice, with local activists already organizing a protest for the next evening. Officer Mitchell sat alone in an office watching his career and reputation crumble. His union representative had arrived and was in discussions with the chief about the next steps. The video evidence was damning, and there was no way to spin what it clearly showed. His actions had been captured from multiple angles by multiple witnesses, and no amount of police procedure or legal maneuvering could change what everyone could see with their own eyes. Back in the conference room, Maya made a decision. She looked at her mother, then at Captain Williams. "I want to do something," she said, her voice growing stronger. "I don't want other kids to go through what I went through today. If my voice can help change things, then I want to use it." Patricia reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. There was pride in her eyes, mixed with worry. "Are you sure, baby? This isn't going to be easy. People will criticize you. They'll question you. They'll try to find any excuse to blame you instead of the officer who hurt you." "I know," Maya said, "but I also know I didn't do anything wrong. And if me speaking up can help make things better even a little bit, then it's worth it." Captain Williams smiled. "You're a brave young woman, Maya. Your mother has every right to be proud of you." He pulled out a business card and handed it to Patricia. "This is my direct number. Call me anytime, day or night. I'm going to make sure you have everything you need. Legal representation, security if you need it, and connections to people who can help amplify your message in productive ways." He stood up, and they all did the same. "For now, I want you both to go home and rest. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. The media is going to want to talk to you. Community leaders are going to want to meet with you. And I'm going to make sure that Officer Mitchell faces every consequence he deserves." As Maya and her mother prepared to leave the police station, they had to exit through a back door to avoid the reporters out front. Captain Williams personally escorted them to their car, making sure they got away safely. As they drove home, through the familiar streets of Riverside, everything looked different to Maya now. She had left for work that morning as an ordinary teenager. She was returning home as someone whose life had been forever changed. The video of her encounter with Officer Mitchell was still spreading, reaching more people every minute. By tomorrow, her face would be known across the country. The question was, what would she do with that recognition? And more importantly, what would happen when the full truth about Officer Mitchell came to light, revealing details that no one, not even Captain Williams, knew yet? The next morning, Maya woke up to find her life had become a national news story. Her mother had kept the television off the previous evening, wanting Maya to rest and process everything that had happened. But when Maya came downstairs for breakfast, she found her mother at the kitchen table, surrounded by newspapers, her phone buzzing constantly with messages and calls. "Mama, what's happening?" Maya asked, though part of her already knew. Patricia looked up, exhaustion clear on her face. She had barely slept, spending most of the night reading articles and watching news coverage of the incident. "You're everywhere, baby. Every news channel, every newspaper, social media. People are calling you brave. They're demanding justice. The mayor is holding a press conference this afternoon about police reform." Maya sat down, feeling overwhelmed. She picked up one of the newspapers and saw her own face on the front page. The headline read, "Teen girl assaulted by officer for knowing her rights. Video sparks national outrage." The article detailed everything that had happened, complete with screenshots from the video and quotes from legal experts about civil rights violations. Her phone began ringing. It was Captain Williams, Maya answered, putting him on speaker so her mother could hear. Good morning, Maya. I hope you got some rest, Captain Williams said, though his tone suggested he had been up all night as well. I'm calling because there have been some significant developments and I wanted you to hear them from me first. What kind of developments? Patricia asked. We've been conducting a thorough investigation into Officer Mitchell, going beyond just yesterday's incident, Captain Williams explained. And what we've found is deeply disturbing. It turns out that Maya wasn't his first victim. We've discovered a pattern of behavior going back several years. Maya felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? Captain Williams took a deep breath. We've found at least 6 other complaints against Officer Mitchell, all involving young people of color. Most were dismissed or buried in paperwork. But after yesterday's video went viral, these other victims started coming forward. We're talking about illegal searches, excessive force, intimidation, and harassment. One case involved a 15-year-old boy who was held in his own car for 2 hours while Mitchell searched it without consent or probable cause, finding nothing. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. And nothing was done about this before? That's what I'm trying to find out, Captain Williams said, his voice tight with anger. Someone in the Riverside Police Department has been covering for Mitchell. Complaints were filed, but they never went anywhere. Internal investigations were either never opened or quietly closed. The question now is who knew about this and why they allowed it to continue. Maya felt a mix of emotions. She was angry that Officer Mitchell had hurt other people and gotten away with it. But she also felt a strange sense of validation knowing that she wasn't crazy, that his behavior really was as wrong as she had felt it was. There's more, Captain Williams continued. We pulled the dashcam footage from Mitchell's patrol car yesterday. He tried to delete it, but our tech team was able to recover it. The audio picks up everything he said, including some racial slurs he used after he put you in the car. He didn't realize his radio was still transmitting to dispatch. Maya felt tears sting her eyes. Hearing that Officer Mitchell had used racial slurs about her after assaulting her made everything feel even more painful. It confirmed what she had suspected but didn't want to believe, that his actions weren't just about power, but about hate. We're building a federal civil rights case against him, Captain Williams said. This goes way beyond a simple assault charge now. He violated your constitutional rights and he did it based on your race. That's a hate crime. He's also facing charges of destroying evidence and obstruction of justice for trying to delete that dashcam footage. Patricia spoke up, her voice shaking with emotion. Thank you, Captain Williams. Thank you for taking this seriously and for digging deeper. It's what should have been done years ago, Captain Williams replied, and that's going to be part of our investigation too. We need to understand why the Riverside Police Department failed to stop Mitchell before he got to Maya. There will be consequences for anyone who covered up his previous actions. After hanging up with Captain Williams, Maya and her mother sat in silence for a moment, processing everything. Then Patricia's phone rang again. It was a lawyer named Jennifer Martinez who specialized in civil rights cases. She had seen the news coverage and wanted to represent Maya pro bono. Ms. Thompson, I've been fighting police brutality cases for 15 years, Jennifer explained when Patricia called her back and put her on speaker. What happened to your daughter is exactly the kind of systemic problem I've dedicated my career to fighting. I want to help you not just with the criminal case against Officer Mitchell, but with a civil lawsuit against the Riverside Police Department for their failure to stop his pattern of abuse. Patricia looked at Maya, who nodded. They both knew this was going to be a long, difficult process, but they also knew it was the right thing to do. By afternoon, the street outside their modest home was filled with news vans and reporters. Captain Williams had sent 2 state police officers to help manage the situation and ensure the family's safety. He had also arranged for Maya to hold a press conference at a local community center, rather than having her home address broadcast on national television. At 3 o'clock, Maya stood behind a podium at the community center, her mother beside her, flanked by Captain Williams on one side and Jennifer Martinez on the other. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, and concerned community members. Maya's hands shook as she unfolded the statement she had written that morning with help from her mother and their new lawyer. My name is Maya Thompson, she began, her voice quiet at first but growing stronger. Yesterday I was walking home from my job at the bookstore when Officer Derek Mitchell stopped me for no reason. When I politely asked why I was being detained and informed him that I knew my constitutional rights, he became angry. He slapped me across my face and arrested me even though I had done nothing wrong. The room was completely silent except for the clicking of cameras. Maya continued, I'm standing here today not just for myself but for all the other young people who have been treated this way by Officer Mitchell and by other officers who abuse their power. I've learned that I wasn't his first victim. There were others before me who tried to speak up, but they weren't believed. Their complaints were ignored. Her voice cracked slightly with emotion, but she pushed forward. I was raised to respect the police. My mother taught me that officers are there to help us, to protect us. But yesterday, an officer hurt me simply because I knew my rights and because of the color of my skin. That's not right. That's not what police are supposed to do. Maya looked directly at the cameras. I'm speaking out today because I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. We need better training for police officers. We need better systems to investigate complaints when officers abuse their power. We need accountability, and we need it now before another young person gets hurt. The room erupted with questions from reporters, but Captain Williams stepped forward to handle them. He announced that Officer Mitchell had been formally charged with assault, violation of civil rights, and obstruction of justice. He also revealed that a special task force was being formed to investigate the Riverside Police Department's handling of previous complaints against Mitchell. After the press conference, Maya felt emotionally drained but also strangely empowered. She had spoken her truth in front of the world and people had listened. Her phone was flooded with messages of support from classmates, teachers, and complete strangers who had been moved by her story. That evening, Maya and her mother watched the news coverage together. Every major network had led with Maya's story. Legal analysts were discussing the implications for police reform. Civil rights leaders were calling for systemic changes, and other victims of police brutality were finding courage to share their own stories. Inspired by Maya's bravery, but as Maya watched herself on television, talking about justice and accountability, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to this story. Captain Williams had mentioned that they were investigating who had covered up the previous complaints against Officer Mitchell. Maya wondered how deep that corruption went, and what other secrets might be hidden within the Riverside Police Department. She was about to find out that the truth was even more shocking than anyone imagined. The investigation into Officer Mitchell's past was uncovering connections that went far beyond one bad cop. There were systems in place that had protected him, and those systems involved people at the highest levels of Riverside's law enforcement and government. The full scope of the corruption was about to be revealed, and it would shake the entire town to its core. As Maya prepared for bed that night, she had no idea that tomorrow would bring revelations that would transform her from a victim seeking justice into a catalyst for change that would reach far beyond Riverside. The story was far from over. In fact, the most important chapter was just beginning. 3 days after the press conference, Captain Williams called Maya and her mother to an urgent meeting at the state police headquarters. When they arrived, they were led to a secure conference room, where several serious-looking officials were waiting. Among them were FBI agents, state attorneys, and internal affairs investigators. Ms. Thompson, Maya, thank you for coming, Captain Williams said, his expression grave. What we're about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear, but it's important that you understand the full scope of what your courage has uncovered. One of the FBI agents, a woman named Agent Reeves, opened a thick folder. Our investigation into Officer Mitchell's past has revealed something much larger than we initially suspected. We've discovered that he was part of an informal network within the Riverside Police Department, a group of officers who protected each other while engaging in civil rights violations, illegal searches, and evidence tampering. Maya felt her mother's hand grip hers tightly under the table. Agent Reeves continued, when complaints were filed against Mitchell or any of the other officers in this network, they were systematically buried. Reports were lost, witnesses were intimidated, and investigations were closed without proper review. This wasn't just a failure of oversight. It was deliberate corruption. Who else was involved? Patricia asked, her voice hard. Captain Williams took over. The former police chief, Richard Donovan, who retired 2 months ago, was actively covering up complaints. The union representative who defended these officers knew about the pattern and helped suppress evidence. And there are at least 5 other officers besides Mitchell who have similar histories of abuse that were hidden. Maya felt sick to her stomach. How many people were hurt? We've identified 23 victims over the past 8 years, Agent Reeves said quietly. Most were young people of color. Many were too afraid to come forward after their initial complaints went nowhere. But after seeing your bravery, Maya, they started contacting us. Your willingness to speak up gave them hope that this time, someone would actually listen. Captain Williams leaned forward. Maya, because of you, we're able to bring justice not just in your case, but in dozens of others. Officer Mitchell has been arrested and is being held without bail. 4 other officers have been suspended and are under investigation. The former chief is facing criminal charges for obstruction of justice. And we're implementing a complete overhaul of how complaints are handled in Riverside. Over the next few weeks, the scope of the changes became clear. The state governor appointed a special oversight board to monitor the Riverside Police Department. New policies were implemented requiring all police interactions to be recorded. Complaint procedures were reformed to include independent civilian review. And mandatory training on civil rights and de-escalation became required for all officers. But perhaps the most significant change came from an unexpected source. The mayor of Riverside, who had initially been defensive about the scandal, realized that real reform was necessary. She reached out to Maya and her mother with a proposal. I want to create a youth advisory board on police relations, the mayor explained during a meeting at City Hall. Young people like you, Maya, who understand what it's like to interact with police as a teenager, especially as a young person of color. This board would work directly with the police department to improve training, review policies, and ensure that what happened to you never happens again. Maya looked at her mother, then back at the mayor. Would we have real power, or would this just be for show? The mayor smiled slightly. I appreciate your directness. Yes, you would have real power. The board's recommendations would be binding. If you identify a problem with police policy or training, the department would be required to address it. Captain Williams has agreed to serve as the liaison between the board and law enforcement. Maya thought about it. She had already lost so much of her normal teenage life to this situation. Her face was recognized everywhere she went. She had to switch to online schooling because the attention at her high school had become overwhelming. But she had also seen the difference her voice could make. I'll do it, Maya said. But I want other victims to be part of it too. The people who came forward after me, they should have a voice in this too. Agreed, the mayor said. 2 months after the incident, Officer Derek Mitchell stood in a courtroom facing federal charges. The evidence against him was overwhelming. The video, the dashcam audio, the testimony of multiple victims, and the records of covered-up complaints painted a clear picture of a man who had abused his badge for years. Maya attended the sentencing hearing with her mother, Captain Williams, and Jennifer Martinez. She watched as the judge reviewed the case, her expression growing more severe as she went through the details. Mr. Mitchell, you were given a badge and a gun in the trust of your community, the judge said. You were supposed to protect people, especially vulnerable young people. Instead, you terrorized them. You violated their rights. You assaulted them. And when your actions were questioned, you tried to destroy evidence and continued your behavior, confident that your fellow officers would protect you. The judge sentenced Officer Mitchell to 8 years in federal prison for civil rights violations, assault, and obstruction of justice. He would also face additional charges in state court. As he was led away in handcuffs, he looked small and defeated, nothing like the intimidating figure who had struck Maya that hot afternoon. Maya felt a complex mix of emotions as she watched him go. There was satisfaction in seeing justice done, but also sadness that it had taken so long and so many victims for the system to finally work. She thought about the 6 other young people who had complained about Mitchell before her, whose voices had been ignored. She wished she could have spared them their pain. After the sentencing, Maya stood on the courthouse steps with Captain Williams, who had become a mentor and friend to her over the past months. You did an incredible thing, Maya, he said. You stood up when it was hard and you changed things. That takes real courage. I was just walking home from work, Maya said with a slight smile. I didn't plan any of this. The best heroes never do, Captain Williams replied. But when the moment came, you didn't back down. You knew your rights, you stood up for yourself, and then you used your voice to help others. That's what real leadership looks like. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of the Riverside City Council, presenting the Youth Advisory Board's first set of recommendations. The board, which included 5 other young people who had experienced problems with police, had spent months studying police procedures, interviewing officers, and developing proposals for reform. Their recommendations included better mental health training for officers, a requirement that all traffic stops be recorded, new procedures for handling complaints that gave civilian oversight real power, and a community outreach program where officers spent time in schools and youth centers building relationships, rather than just responding to problems. The council approved all of the recommendations unanimously. Local news covered the story, but this time the focus wasn't on Maya as a victim. It was on Maya as a leader, a young woman who had turned a traumatic experience into meaningful change. Maya's story continued to inspire others across the country. She was invited to speak at conferences about police reform. She testified before the state legislature about the need for better oversight of law enforcement, and she continued to excel in her studies, determined to achieve her dream of becoming a civil rights lawyer. On the one-year anniversary of the incident, Maya visited the spot on Main Street where Officer Mitchell had struck her. A small memorial had been placed there by community members, with flowers and signs reading "Know Your Rights" and "Justice for Maya." Someone had painted a mural on the wall of the nearby hardware store showing young people of different races holding hands, with the words, "Speak Up, Stand Strong" written above them. Maya stood there for a long moment, remembering the fear and pain of that day. But she also thought about everything that had come from it. The corrupt officers who had been removed from the force, the new policies that protected young people, the youth advisory board that gave teenagers a real voice in how their community was policed, the other victims who had found justice, and the countless young people across the country who had learned about their rights and felt empowered to stand up for themselves. Her mother came to stand beside her, putting an arm around her shoulders. "I'm so proud of you, baby. You took something terrible and turned it into something beautiful." Maya leaned into her mother's embrace. "I just didn't want anyone else to feel what I felt that day, scared and powerless and like nobody would believe me. Because of you, fewer people will," Patricia said. "You changed things, Maya. You really did." As they walked home together through the streets of Riverside, Maya noticed something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. A police officer was playing basketball with a group of teenagers in the park, laughing and joking with them. Another officer was helping an elderly woman carry her groceries. At the community center, there was a poster advertising a youth forum on police relations. Things weren't perfect. There was still work to do, and Maya knew that real change took time. But there was progress. There was hope. And there was proof that one person's courage could start a wave of change that lifted everyone. Maya had walked down this street a year ago as just another teenager trying to get home from work. She had been stopped, assaulted, and arrested for no reason other than knowing her rights and the color of her skin. But she hadn't stayed silent. She hadn't accepted injustice. And because of that decision, because of her bravery in that terrible moment and every moment after, her community was different, better, more just. As she reached her home, Maya looked back at the neighborhood she loved, seeing it with new eyes. This was her community, and she had helped make it a place where young people like her could walk home from work without fear. That was worth everything she had been through.